Hey y'all, it's Jennifer. Welcome back to my channel. You might can tell because we're sitting back on the couch today that I'm coming to you with a book haul. Now, you may have seen a very recent book haul from me, but I assure you it actually wasn't recent. It was a book haul that I filmed months ago and for some odd reason just never edited and uploaded. So this is a more recent book haul. I have been unhauling, and so the majority of these are used books that I picked up at my local used bookstore. First up is an interesting item to haul, but I thought that I would haul it. It is the Byron Journal for this year, the first Byron Journal. I believe we will get a second volume towards the end of the year, because I joined the Byron Society because I've lost control of my life and I'm just obsessed with Lord Byron. But the theme this time around is apparently Don Juan, and so I have not yet read that. So I am hoping that I can read these articles in conjunction with my reading of Don Juan, and hopefully they will add to the experience of it, because I don't really have the highest hopes for that from Lord Byron. There's a reason that I've held off on diving into it until now, and so I'm hoping that these articles really contextualize that for me. Okay, I'm gonna try to do all of the ancient history together. It's not much, but hopefully I can gather them all together so that this haul can be in some semblance of an order. So this is the Histories by Herodotus, and you might can tell that I have started this. I am not very far in. I really did not know what to expect with this. This is technically the first historical writing ever done. So this is the first work of historical writing, and it was written in ancient Greece. And it's talking a lot about Greece's interactions with Persia. And so this is a really interesting time period that's a little bit old for me. It's a little bit too ancient for me now. And it's funny because I think I've probably told y'all before, when I was a child, ancient Greece was not old enough for me. If you were not the ancient Egyptians, you were just not old enough for me. I was very ageist. And now I'm kind of ageist in the opposite direction. I really love antiquity, but I'm not all that familiar with the ancient Greeks anymore. And so this is gonna be a learning curve, I think. And I think it's gonna just throw a whole bunch of names at me. So I have started this, but I've put it down for the time being because I wanna be in the right headspace for it, and I really wanna commit to it. It might be something that I need to buddy read, or maybe we could all do kind of a read along. Let me know if you would be interested in that, because I do think that it would be helpful to read Herodotus with other people. I also have an edition of the Iliad, which I am currently reading. This is the Caroline Alexander translation, and I am really interested in reading these ancient epics translated by women. So this is really exciting to me. So far, I like her translation. I won't say that I love it. My controversial opinion, my most controversial opinion about ancient Greek literature, and I have a lot of them apparently, but my most controversial opinion, I think, is that I really love the Alexander Pope translation of the Iliad. And it is not at all accurate, apparently, when you speak to classicists and ancient Greek historians. What he did was so far off from what the original Greek was intended to be, but there is something about that that's very majestic, and so I do think that it kind of gets to the spirit of the Iliad in an interesting way, and so I'm kind of partial to that. But this certainly won't be the last time that I reread the Iliad, and I'm interested in trying all of the translations of it that I can get my hands on. So this is the translation that I am currently reading. The natural progression from the Iliad is to the Odyssey, so I was really thrilled to pick up the Emily Wilson translation of the Odyssey at my used bookstore. There's been a lot of hype around this because, similar to Caroline Alexander, this is the first time that a woman has translated the Odyssey into English. And so these are very recent translations, both Emily Wilson's and Caroline Alexander's. And I think it's interesting that it's taken this long for a female classicist to get their translation finished and published. I know Emily Wilson is currently working on a translation of the Iliad, which is really thrilling to me. So I'm hoping that I fall in love with her translation the way that so many others have. I just don't tend to really like the Odyssey. I have struggled with the Odyssey because it is a book that I read so many times in school. I mean, we read it in high school. I read it in at least 3 different classes in college. And it's just a book that you study ad nauseum until the joy is taken out of it. So it's one that I'm going to be interested to read not in a classroom setting. Last of the ancient Greeks, I did get the 3 Theban plays by Sophocles. So this is Antigone, Oedipus the King, and Oedipus at Colonus. And this is a semi-trilogy of tragic plays. I have read this, and it was many, many years ago, because I used to be quite partial to Antigone in particular, but the Oedipus cycle has never really intrigued me the way that it has so many others. And so I'm definitely due for a reread here. I know a lot of people read this for Ancients-a-thon this year, so it's really exciting to see that so many people fell in love with it this year. So hopefully I can return to it and really see it with fresh eyes. It's been long enough now that I think coming back to it, it would almost be like reading it for the first time. A piece of ancient literature that I should have mentioned first, this is older than all of the other ancient Greek writings that I have just shown you. This is the Mahabharata. And I am so pumped about this because Tanya from Bookish Topics and I are gonna buddy read this. It's probably gonna take us 6 months, but we're both really, really excited about it. We've both been wanting to read another kind of big, huge epic akin to Homer or Virgil's Aeneid, and so we settled on the Mahabharata. This has been on my TBR for years, and I am so excited that I'm about to get to it. I have really high hopes for it. I think I'm really gonna love it, but this is an abridged edition, as I found out, because I have since found out that the Mahabharata is like twice this length. And there's no way that they could have fit it into a single volume. So I hope that we got the greatest hits, at least, in this abridged version. Normally, I don't advocate for abridged versions, but this was basically what Tanya and I could find. So I will link to Tanya's channel down below. I love her channel, and I think all of you would probably really like her as well if you like my channel. But this is something that is kind of next up on my hit list. I picked up a copy of the Decameron by Boccaccio, and it may shock you to hear this, given that I really, really love Italian classics, and Italian medieval classics at that, but I have never read Boccaccio, and it's because I kind of feel like, in particular, the Decameron won't work very well for me. I don't think his humor will work very well for me, and hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully I really, really enjoy this, but it's a long book to be reading if you're not really enjoying it. But I know a lot of people have picked this up in the last year or so because they have been reading plague-inspired literature, and a lot of people have really, really enjoyed what they've seen of Boccaccio. A lot of people really have not. So I'm going to be interested to see how I feel about him. Hopefully I really like him, and I really like the Decameron. I also picked up Leon Battista Alberti's on painting. This was kind of a treatise on painting that was written in the early to mid 1400s, and it was really a game changer in the Renaissance. It changed the way that people viewed painting, viewed art, and it kind of changed techniques a little bit. It was kind of a how-to. This is how you should be painting. And so it caused a lot of reflection for artists of the mid 1400s. Now, I have DNF'd this, and it hurts me to say that because the book is so short, but it is literally a manual. That is all it feels like, is instruction, is direction. Now, the introduction was really interesting because Alberti was a really interesting figure in his own right, but I just don't know. I don't know that this is one that I will ever recommend, but it is one that I plan to come back to and finish. I absolutely will finish this one. I also picked up a small edition of Thomas More's Utopia, and I am tentatively looking forward to this because I've heard really good things about it. I've heard it's just a really revolutionary read, and this was written in the mid 1500s, so this is a Renaissance classic that I am really kind of fascinated by. I'm fascinated by Thomas More as a person, but he is one of the figures responsible for how we view Richard III in kind of a negative light. He wrote an entire history of Richard III that was just so horrifying, like really, really a terrible, terrible biography of Richard III that Shakespeare then went on to kind of credit with how he wrote Richard III, the play. And so Thomas More and I have a very contentious relationship, as you might can imagine, because of that. But I will be interested to read some of his writing. I have actually never read what he wrote on Richard III. And so I think it might be interesting to read that with fresh eyes and kind of divorce myself from Richard, which is a very hard thing for me to do. But I do think that I will probably really like Thomas More's writing because I do really love English Renaissance writing. It's just so beautiful to me. Okay, moving into kind of the Georgian Regency era, I did pick up Goethe's Faust. This is part 1 of Faust, and I am pumped about this. Just so pumped about this. Christopher Marlowe's Faustus is one of my favorite classics of all time. It's just one of my favorite works of fiction that I've ever read. I really, really love it. And I don't know if I love how Christopher Marlowe did it or if I just really love the story. So I'm going to be interested to read Goethe's retelling of this kind of really famous story in German circles. This is a really famous kind of moral tale in Germany. I would love to read more German classics, and if you have recommendations for some, I would love to hear them down below, because I really loved Goethe's writing in The Sorrows of Young Werther, and so I feel confident that I will probably really like it here, but I would love to know who else I should check out, who is a big German classic author that I should read. I have read Death in Venice by Thomas Mann, but that's all I can claim to. That's really all of my German background, that and the Nibelungenlied. I got really lucky when I found this, which was Caleb Williams by William Godwin. And William Godwin is Mary Shelley's father. And this is a Gothic classic, and I am just really excited about it because some people say this is really good. Now, others say this is really terrible, and I'm open to it because I really like a Gothic classic, and there are a lot of them that people nowadays might term as terrible, but I tend to really like the tropes that they're playing with, and I like the characterization. I like the events. I like kind of the formula of it. And so I'll be interested to see how Caleb Williams does this. Now, this is a really, really old edition, and I'm really scared to read it, actually, that when I read it, it might fall apart. As you can see, the pages are pulling away from the binding, and it is from 1960. So this is a relatively old paperback, and it does not really want to give me anything. So I'm scared. Maybe I should reinforce this, but I am really looking forward to this. Last of our kind of Regency Georgian era classics is Waverley by Sir Walter Scott. Yes, I finally got a copy of Waverley. I'm so excited. I can officially start his kind of Waverley series, which is a series of historical fiction novels. They aren't really connected. You can read them in any kind of order, I think, but it kind of felt pertinent to me to start at the beginning. I've read Ivanhoe, of course, because I can't shut up about it. But I do have a couple other books of his on my shelves that I've really wanted to read, but I thought, no, I should wait. One day Waverley will cross my path, and that day was very recently at the used bookstore. So this is a Scottish classic that is focusing on the Jacobite uprising, I believe. And this is just the most beautiful cover. I mean, is that not beautiful? This is a close-up of the portrait of Flora MacDonald done in the 18th century. So that is just a beautiful, what a stunning, stunning portrait. I just love the tartan here and the flowers. I mean, that's beautiful. Next, we will cover just a couple of Russian classics that I've picked up recently. So I picked up used First Love and Other Stories by Ivan Turgenev. And yes, I have read First Love, but I have not read any of the other stories or novellas that are included in this edition. And so I am kind of currently reading this. I am picking up a novella or a story and reading it here and there. And so I have finished reading The Diary of a Superfluous Man, which was 5 stars. Love it. Moo Moo, which I had issues with. I'm reading Asya right now. I've read First Love, which was 5 stars. And then we have King Lear of the Steppes and The Song of Triumphant Love. And I'll tell you what, I am a little bit in love with Ivan Turgenev's writing. It's just utterly beautiful, and all of the stories are so good. I did think one of the stories was a little bit weak, but this is not a wrap-up, and we can just wait till the end of the month for me to tell you my thoughts on that. But I am really loving Ivan Turgenev, and so I was really happy to see this at my local used bookstore. I also found a copy of Fathers and Sons by Ivan Turgenev, and I am so pumped about this. I have loved his short fiction so much that I feel confident I'm really gonna love his novels. And so this is his most famous novel, and it is really, really short, but I think I might struggle with it because apparently it is a more realist take on things. It's moving kind of from romanticism into realism. And some of these shorter works are so romantic in nature and so overly romanticized and are all about nature and first love and really feeling things. And so I'm wondering how the tone will change when I get into Fathers and Sons, but I am really, really looking forward to it. The last Russian classic that I have recently picked up, I picked up new, and this is Novels, Tales, Journeys, the complete prose of Alexander Pushkin, because I have not been able to stop thinking about Yevgeny Onegin since I finished it, and I really wish I had an edition of that in an updated translation, because I do feel like I probably would have enjoyed it even more had I been reading it in a more modern translation and had I been annotating it. I really think I should have annotated it. But this is a collection of his prose, and I am most excited about The Queen of Spades. I know I am going to love it. I just know that I'm going to love that story. And so I'm really excited to get into his prose. The Russians are teaching me that I am not actually averse to short stories and novellas. I actually can like novellas and short stories in certain cases, and so hopefully that trend continues for me with Alexander Pushkin. But let's move on to the Victorian period. But before we really get into the Victorian period as a whole, we're gonna just take a stop in Anthony Trollope town, because somebody brought in the entire Barsetshire Chronicles used at my local used bookstore, and I have read The Warden. The Warden was missing, and so was the last book in the series, but I believe I also have that somewhere. So I picked up Barchester Towers, a beautiful, beautiful cover. I love these old Wordsworth classics. This is a really small one, as you can see. These are much bigger. So this is Barchester Towers. This is book 2. Dr. Thorne, which is book 3. Another really lovely illustration on the cover. Framley Parsonage and The Small House at Allington. So hopefully I can kind of plow through the rest of this series. I really enjoyed The Warden when I read it last year. And the year prior, I actually DNF'd it because I found it rather boring. So hopefully I just know when is the right time to pick up one of his books. I think he is a very quiet writer, and I'm not always in the mood for kind of a cozy, quiet setting. And so hopefully the next time that I pick up one of his books, I am really, really in the mood for it. I think that's going to be key for me with Anthony Trollope. But the last thing that I picked up from Anthony Trollope Town was He Knew He Was Right. And a lot of people have recommended this to me over the years. I believe this is one of his standalones, and I am really looking forward to this. I think I might put this on my Victober TBR this year. You never know. I feel like I already have 20 books on my Victober TBR, but I do really want to read an Anthony Trollope this year, and I think I would like it to be one of his standalones. But I would love to know down below what your favorite in the Barsetshire series is, because I know that a lot of people have very varied opinions on that series, and some people really favor certain books of his. I feel sure that I'm probably going to like Dr. Thorne, but Barchester Towers is one that I feel a little bit apprehensive about. I think it's going to be kind of a weak link for me. I also picked up Ruth by Elizabeth Gaskell. This is another that is on my never-ending Victober TBR. So this is about a fallen woman, and I'm really interested to see what Elizabeth Gaskell does with this. I have been really fascinated by her for a very long time now, because all of her novels feel very different, they feel very distinct, and yet they are all very similar in kind of heart. I think that she really is an author that you feel on the page. Sometimes you don't, but I think people like Elizabeth Gaskell and Charles Dickens have a personality that comes through in their writing. And I really like Elizabeth Gaskell's personality. So I'm really pumped about Ruth. A lot of people have told me that I would probably like Ruth and Sylvia's Lovers. So I am just looking forward to continuing my journey with Elizabeth Gaskell. Next up, I picked up 2 Wilkie Collins books. So first, I have Jezebel's Daughter, which is really, really short, and I'm currently reading because I couldn't resist it. And so this is really about a mother that is doing everything that she possibly can to secure a good future for her daughter, but she kind of is going about it in the wrong ways. And so this is really typical Wilkie Collins. It's just so much fun. I have so much fun reading him, and I love his characters. I love the world that he builds around these characters. And this is really interesting because this is set in Frankfurt. And so maybe I'm going on a German kick because I just really want to read books set in Germany and German classics, but I am loving this specifically because it is set in Frankfurt. And I also picked up The Dead Secret, and this is one that is set in Cornwall, and it is, of course, about a secret that somebody told somebody else, and years on, someone else comes back to try to figure out what was really happening with that. And so I expect that I'll probably really love this the way that I am loving Jezebel's Daughter and the way that I have loved every other Wilkie Collins book that I have read. I just absolutely adore him. If you have never tried Wilkie Collins, please pick him up because I just think he's a hoot. I mean, he's just so much fun to read. Here is the last that is on my Victober TBR, I promise. Yes, all of these are tentatively on my Victober TBR, but this is one that I absolutely have to get to this year. This is one that I absolutely have to get to in Victober, and that is The Ring and the Worm by Robert Browning. And so this is a long form kind of epic poem that is about a murder trial that happened in Rome in the 1600s. Apparently Robert Browning was inspired to write this when he picked up a little book one day at a flea market in Florence, and it was telling all of the accounts of what happened during this murder trial, which is really interesting, and I think I'm probably just going to absolutely love this. I really wanted to get an edition of Elizabeth Barrett Browning's poetry for Victober this year because I would really like to try her, and I would like to try Aurora Lee, but when I saw this at the used bookstore, I said, it's a sign. I'm going to try Robert Browning first. So I am really, really looking forward to this, and I just feel sure I'm really going to love it. It is very big though, which does make me a little bit apprehensive about it because I don't think there were very many notes. And in fact, no, there were not. There were not very many notes. Okay, there we go. There are our notes for all of this. Hopefully we don't need them. I do feel like I might be familiar enough with some of the stuff that he's talking about that I won't need notes, but given that I have never really read poetry from the Victorian period, I don't really know how he's gonna write. So I am a little bit nervous about this, but I do feel like I'm probably really gonna love the Brownings because I believe they are also a little bit in love with Italy to the same degree that I am. So this is one that I am really looking forward to and is for sure going on my Victober TBR. Here is a classic that was published in the 19th century, but I guess we can't designate it Victorian because it wasn't published in the UK and Ireland. So this is just a 19th century classic, but it is also an epic poem, and it is the Kalevala, which is a Finnish epic. And I am really, really looking forward to this. I love epic poetry, and I have decided that it's time that I kind of broaden my horizons here and I just read all of the epic poetry that I can find. And so I also have a copy of the Lusíads coming to me, which is a Portuguese epic poem. But I am really fascinated by this. This is one that I've heard quite a bit about, but some people really struggle with this one. So this is one that I know I'm gonna have to take my time with. And last but not least, we have two more modern classics. First off, we have The Trial by Franz Kafka. I have the sense I'm really gonna love this. I did read The Metamorphosis in high school and I hated that so much. It had nothing to do with his writing, but that was like kind of a weird phobia of mine. If you don't know what The Metamorphosis is about, it's about a man who wakes up as a giant bug. And I really struggled with that. It's kind of a weird phobia that I have. And it is of bugs that kind of get on their back and they can't move. And that is something that happens in The Metamorphosis that's haunted me for literally 10 years at this point. But I don't think my issue with it had anything to do with his writing. So I'm really looking forward to trying The Trial. Years ago when I was traveling in Prague and Vienna, and I can't remember in which city it was because I went there over the weekend to both cities back to back, but I actually ate in a restaurant that Franz Kafka used to frequent, which I think is really interesting. I think it must have been in Prague because I associate him with Prague, but I thought that was wild. So I have a literary connection to Franz Kafka. So hopefully I really like this. Last but not least, we have Luigi Pirandello's 6 Characters in Search of an Author and Other Plays. So many people have recommended him to me that I feel confident that I'm really going to enjoy his work. So the plays included in this edition, I will let you know, are 6 characters in search of an author, Henry IV, and So It Is, If You Think So. And Henry IV is, I believe, the play that most people recommend to me. So that's one that I am really looking forward to getting to. So that was another massive classics haul, and I'm not ashamed of it. I would love to know down below if you have read any of these, if you particularly recommend them, and I would love to know too if you're already constructing your Victober TBRs, because I kind of feel like I'm going crazy out here, but I already have my Victober TBR kind of set. But that's going to be all for me today. I hope you're all having a great week. Happy reading. Goodbye.